These are the safety rules for the disc, spindle, and edge sander. Safety question number 1. Sand on the right or the downward side of the disc sander. The disc sander spins this direction. We want to sand on this half of the disc sander. If we sand on this half of the disc sander, our piece could be thrown up. Safety question number 2. On the disc sander, the table must be about a ½ inch away from the disc. That means that the distance from the disc to the table should not be greater than 1/2 of an inch. That distance should probably be even less, but we have a little bit older of a disc sander and it's getting worn out. So if this gap is ever bigger than 1/2 of an inch, get the instructor because something's not set up properly. Number 3, the minimum width piece of wood that can be sanded on the disc sander is 1½ inches. Anything narrower than 1½ inches, and we run the risk of it possibly getting pinched in between the disc sander and the table. Safety rule number 4, you must hold the piece of wood being sanded with the spindle sander with both hands. So I want to make sure that if I'm going to sand the inside, I keep my fingers 3 inches away, and I can now sand inside curves. Sanding outside curves is very difficult with the spindle sander. It's better done on the disc sander. Number 5, your hands must be at least 3 inches away from the sandpaper. On the disc sander, this track is about 3 inches away from the disc. We want to keep our hands on this side of the track. Number 6, pushing too hard on the piece of wood will wear out the sandpaper faster, as well as put a burn in your piece of wood. You can see here that wood was burned because it was pushed too hard on the disc sander. We don't want to create friction. Friction is what causes the sandpaper to wear out. On any of the sanders, if you ever have to remove more than 1/16 of an inch of material, please use a blade, a bandsaw, a table saw, a miter saw to do that. We're only sanding about 1/16 of an inch max on any of the 3 sanding machines that we have in class. Number 7, never wear gloves or any other loose articles of clothing when using the spindle sander or disc sander or edge sander. Gloves can get caught in the machine and it can be very dangerous for your hands. Safety rule number 8 says you must always use the sled when sanding with the edge sander. The disc sander is intended to sand outside edges. So if I was going to make this push stick, this outside edge is excellent to be sanded on the disc sander. We're obviously not going to be able to sand anything inside because it does not fit. We could sand this straight edge on the disc sander too, as long as my fingers stay more than 3 inches away from the sanding disc. You have permission to change the spindles in the spindle sander. If I wanted to sand this push stick, the inside of that curve, I would need to change the spindle on the spindle sander. Here are the steps to change the spindle on the spindle sander. First, remove the throat plate from the spindle sander. Next, locate the wrenches and we will unscrew the spindle from underneath. You'll need to get the wrenches on both the arbor nut and the spindle nut. Loosen the spindle and remove it. Once the old spindle is removed, we can select our new spindle. We'll put the wrench on the spindle lock nut and we can simply hand tighten in the new spindle. You'll also need to select a new throat plate because the old throat plate is much too large. We do not want that much clearance. When selecting a throat plate, notice there's a little nib that has to line up with the nib in the table. Give it a tap and you're all set to go.